which were the best samosas I've ever tasted in my life. Also, a note on that super enlightening talk, my little bit is going to be probably one step, in front of learning from history, and I'm going to deal a little bit with the last 10 years and the next 10 years, how we're seeing that shift, what it means for the present. Quick check in the room. How many folks on social media know? How many have an Instagram account? Okay. Did somebody say 50%? 80%? I look more like 95 to me, except for the first row. But okay. Yeah. You want to remove that mouse is moving? And do I have a Okay. Good afternoon, is it? Almost 10 minutes to afternoon. My name is Safdar. I'm a filmmaker, an educator who now lives in Goa. In the next 15 minutes, I'm just going to be speaking about how one of the things that you can do today for a better future is create more content. My time starts as a class teacher. This is back in 2012. In a school in a neighborhood called Sirampur in Delhi. The size of the school was probably half the size of this auditorium. A lot of the kids in this class are kids who don't know ABCs yet, first generational learners. One of the big lessons that I had teaching in a classroom was that I hated being inside a classroom as a teacher, pretty much as I hated being inside a classroom as a student. To cope with this idea of not enjoying my time, there was something that I started doing. I started spending time with my students outside of the classroom, hanging out, and taking interest in other things that were interesting to the students and to me. This showed me something very, 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 very exciting, which was when students are taken out of the classroom, the amount of learning that happens with teachers was monumental, and I saw this in front of you. This is a kid called Ayan. He gave me one of the most beautiful metaphors I've ever heard in my life. I once asked him what it was that he liked doing best. His answer was nothing. I asked him what he meant by nothing. He said, nothing, like chilling. I said, what do you mean by chilling? He said, chilling is like what a bed sheet does on a bed. I have not heard something more profound and a simile more in all my life till now. Many years later, I figured, I walked into the world of films. There's a film I made called Chippa, which is a story of a 10-year-old boy scouring the streets of Calcutta one night, trying to decipher a letter that his father had left behind, a letter that he could not read. A couple of years after that, I made a film called Ready Steady. It's a film made with a bunch of teenagers, not much older than the crowd in this room. The making of this film was something that was incredible. We went down this journey where not only did these teenagers tell stories, they wrote the script of the film based on their own lives and their own experiences. They then went on to play their own characters. They went on to become members of the crew. They were parts of the camera team, and the art team, and the costume team. And we sort of co-created this film together. Now mind you, these are kids who come from my Teach for India classroom. These are kids who are not particularly academically gifted. These were kids who were not particularly creatively gifted. But we went down this long process. And what ended up happening was that by the end of the process, these kids started, in their words, killing it. Today, a bunch of these kids are in the best colleges in the world. There's somebody at UWC Wales, there's somebody at UC Berkeley, there's somebody on 100% scholarship at NID, there's somebody on 100% scholarship at Azim Premji University, there's somebody at 100% scholarship at FAME, and they're just blowing it out of the park. When I got to know this, one of the questions that I asked myself was, what is it that these kids learned from this process of making a film together, which ended up keeping them in good stead? Simply put, what are some great skills that we should be teaching children today to be able to equip them better for the future? With this thought, I went back to my childhood. One of the things that they say is that the maximum development that happens in a human mind happens by age 6. At age 6, I was learning cursive language. I remember spending hours and hours and hours and hours of time being told how to write A and how to write B and how to join them together. When I was preparing for this talk, I did a quick check. In the last 1 week, the amount of time I have spent putting pen to paper is 0. In the last 1 year, the amount of time that I have spent putting pen to paper is less than cumulatively 2 hours of time. It got me thinking, are kids today, age 6, also spending as much time as I was learning cursive handwriting? And is that the best use of time and the best skill that we can give to kids growing up today? I take the case, that's my daughter, 5 years old, Noor, doesn't know how to read and write. That's my mom, 65. Between them, 2,000 kilometers in 60 years. My daughter can take my phone out, hit this green symbol with a phone on it, check for my mother's photograph, hit that logo, press a record button, leave a voice message, and feel happy about it. My mom, back in Calcutta, while cooking lunch, is going to see the phone pinging. She's going to hit play. She's going to hear what my daughter has to say. She's going to smile. She's going to record a message back and leave it. A perfectly intimate, legitimate conversation happening between two people with 60 years and 2,000 kilometers between them. None of them needing to read or write. Here's another trend. When social media started, homepage of Facebook used to be, what's on your mind? And it used to be a touch for you to be able to spend the next 2 lines talking about it in text. Homepage of social media started moving. A few years later, Instagram came on, and homepages started looking like this. Photographs with captions being pushed to the bottom. Today, if you open your homepage of any social media app, you see videos. The message is loud and clear. We're now talking 25 frames a second. Print was invented to communicate to people outside of the room, to record. Communication, simply put, is a transfer of information, but not only of information, is the transfer of knowledge, is the transfer of wisdom, is the transfer of emotions. And today, that's happening through video. It's safe to say that the camera and a microphone has replaced today what a pen and paper was when we were growing up. A camera and a microphone inside your smartphone is all it's going to take for us to be able to communicate better. Which then begs the question that if the future of communication clearly is in video, then surely the future of learning is also in video. And if the future of learning is in video, should we not be spending time teaching kids how to use it? So with that thought, we started off with this idea of saying, hey, what if we were to build a school where we taught using video? And so the research started, and we said, if we were to reimagine learning today, what are some of the most important skills that kids can learn for the future? 2 pieces of data blew my mind. Across the country, 1 in every 2 Indian youth is barely employable. And the one skill that lacks most in kids getting out of college today is communication. The other piece of data, the average Indian teenager across the length and breadth of the country, across socioeconomic divide, across geographical divide, across language divide, spends on an average 5 to 8 hours a day on screen media. 5 to 8 hours a day is a lot of time. It's more time than instructional hours in school, it's more time than spent with their parents, it's more time than spent with your friends outside of the phone, of course. And so, looking at these 2 pieces of data, the next question we asked was, what are we doing on our phones? Here's where it gets interesting. We ran a survey with about 4,000 teenagers across the country, asking how many of them spend time to make content. Turns out, 80% of kids on social media have not made a single piece of content. Most of the time is spent either consuming content or at best, sharing content. This was very surprising. And this told me that maybe here's where the needle needs to move. I went back. Some of the educators in the room might be aware of this. Our good friend Benjamin Bloom came up with this theory saying, how do kids learn best? And what are the verbs that should be associated with kids learning better? To remember is where the pyramid starts. To then understand, to apply, to analyze, to evaluate, and eventually, kids learn best when they're creative. So here's the hypothesis that we're throwing out, which is to be able to say, if we can move the needle from kids using most of their time in the day to scroll content, and we shift it to them becoming creators and creating content, what does that mean for our country? What does that mean for our times at large? We dig deeper into what does it mean to create content. Creating content is essentially creating stories. Creating stories is essentially 2 things. 1, having insight. 2, the articulation of that insight. What is insight? Insight is information that I have gathered, added with life experiences that I have, which come out with a particular idea that I'm trying to portray. Information with knowledge and experience brings perspective, which brings to insight. Second is, how do I articulate it? Can I have some clarity in my articulation? And can it be engaging? Is it interesting? Is it boring? Will somebody wait till the end of their dream, or will they swipe? Right? So insight begins with curiosity, asking the question. Articulation begins with, is there clarity of thought? And is my content engaging? One of the most beautiful stories that I keep coming back to is of course, the story of the apple falling from the tree. I cannot fathom how that question, which is such a silly question to ask, led to people remembering this theory forever and forever. The idea that gravity is explained by Newton sitting under a tree and watching an apple fall, which probably did not happen, or was a great story which had great insight and incredible imagery, leading to exclusive and incredible articulation. What's the process like? You inquire, you ask a question, you create, you throw it out, you refine it, you do it again, and then you publish it, you gather feedback, you go back to one. What does that mean in remaking? You have an idea, you shoot a video, you edit it, you publish it, You look at the engagement, you look at the comments, you look at your likes, and you go back to making it. Here's the larger theory of change, which is if more people started creating instead of starting to consume, if we spent more of our 5 to 8 hours a day creating something instead of simply consuming it, this is what it would lead to. Enough data tells us that better communication skills lead to better economic opportunities. It means you're going to do better at your interviews, you're going to do better in life, and probably you're going to earn a little bit more money. More important is that insight and articulation often leads to becoming better decision makers. Better decision making comes from having a sense of self-awareness. What do I like? What is important to me? How do I function? And a little bit of social awareness, which is what's happening outside of me, what's happening around me, insight and articulation, what to say and how to say it. And if you're more self-aware and you're more socially aware, you're going to become better decision makers for the future of our planet. And God knows that we need better decision makers for the future of our planet. We need to act better, we need to think better, we need to vote better, we need to record history better, and we need to leave things better for the generations to come. So if there's one piece of advice I'm going to leave you with, it is this. Spend more time creating content than time consuming it. That's possibly the best thing you can do today for a better future for yourself and the world around you. And that's all.